Limited perspectives impact society by allowing people to become selfish and believe that their wants and needs are more important than others. In Shakespeare's Macbeth, Macbeth is seen as selfish because he kills King Duncan so that he can become king, but he doesn't think about what other people may want. This is a selfish move because many people die as a result of Macbeth becoming king. I'll go no more. I am afraid to think what I have done. Look on't again I dare not. This quote comes after Macbeth has killed King Duncan, so it's showing that he feels guilty about it. But he still has committed the murder, and there's no going back. We have scotched the snake, not killed it. She'll close and be herself, whilst our poor Malice remains in danger of her former tooth. So this quote is discussing that although Macbeth is king, he still does not feel safe and is worried about the witch's prophecy about Banquo's son becoming king. So he decides that the best decision is to kill them. And this is a very big step from the first quote where he feels very guilty about killing King Duncan and then all of a sudden he's very power hungry. So we see a very big change for Macbeth. So Macbeth it can be seen as selfish because he goes from being a very loyal person to his king, and then he gets the chance to become king, and he must have it. So that can be seen as selfish because he takes the life of King Duncan, and becomes king himself, even though that's not what anybody but himself and his wife wanted. So, moving on to Beowulf. This story is often debated on whether Beowulf was selfless or selfish, and I would argue that he's both, because he did give himself up to defeat the monster and save the townspeople, but he also did this for some rather selfish reasons. But Beowulf longed only for fame. So this is a good example that Beowulf may only be defeating this monster for selfish needs or wants. The text is essentially saying that while Beowulf fights Grendel's mother, all he really wanted was fame. He could have given up at any point, but he didn't because he really wanted to become famous. So although it is a good deed and he is saving a lot of people, um, his main motivation is to become famous for doing so, rather than just being a good Samaritan. I've never known fear. As a youth, I fought in endless battles. I am old now, but I will fight again, seek fame still, if the dragon hiding in his tower dares to face me. So, this quote is just another example of Beowulf doing this good deed for selfish reasons. That he's still seeking fame. He still wants to be recognized as one of the best warriors, which is definitely fair, but that seems like one of the main reasons that he's doing all this. So Beowulf's limited perspective seems to be making him rather selfish, that he's defeating this dragon to become some great hero, which he does become, and he is seen as the savior and this great warrior, but it's rather selfish that he is doing it for the attention. He's not doing it just to be a good person, he's doing it so that he can become well known. So, Frankenstein. Frankenstein is extremely selfish. He brings a monster to life without thinking about the possible outcomes and ends up getting a lot of people killed um, and murdered. And he really only created this monster for his own personal gain, and it ended up destroying him in the end. So, I had worked for nearly 2 years for the sole purpose of infusing life into an inanimate body. For this I had deprived myself of rest and health. But now that I had finished, the beauty of the dream vanished, and breathless horror and disgust filled my heart. So this quote demonstrates that Victor had invested entirely 2 years of creating this monster but somehow didn't ever think that it would possibly end badly. So this just proves that he did it for selfish reasons. I had turned loose into the world a depraved wretch, whose delight was in carnage and misery, had he not murdered my brother. So, this quote is when Victor finally starts to realize and understand how his actions have consequences and how he has caused an immense amount of grief and hurt for his own family. Um, and he very quickly starts to feel very guilty. My tale was not one to announce publicly. Its astounding horror would be looked upon as madness by the vulgar. Okay, so this is yet another example of when Victor doesn't take responsibility and is even scared to take responsibility for his actions. Um, and another human being, Justine, is murdered for it. So at this point, he has created a monster, and his little brother and Justine have both paid the price for it. So, Victor Frankenstein has showed his selfishness in many different ways. The first being when he creates the monster, he doesn't think about potential consequences. He really only does it for his own personal gain and because it's really just something he wants to do. Um, and then he is selfish when many people are hurt and have to pay the price for his actions. He doesn't stand up and save. Potentially, he could have saved Justine. Um, and then another way he's selfish is that the monster is telling him like what he needs, and Victor Frankenstein will not create it for him for potentially good reasons, but then yet another person, Elizabeth, has to die because of that. So Victor Frankenstein, I would say, is one of the most selfish characters in all of the books that I've read.